The future of Halo Infinite is now looking to be dramatically changed. Aspects have been scrapped. This may have led to why Joseph Staten has left. We have corroborated information about the future of Halo even being handed to other studios instead of 343. I'm going to break it all down for you in this video. I've got a tweet that's been interpreted, it's been corroborated by another source, as well as Reddit is weighing in on this and trying to make sense of what was said in native French on Twitter, but it is being corroborated by other sources. People are saying this is accurate, this lines up with things that they've heard. We already covered this in a very different way. I did a live show where I essentially said, listen, this is on Microsoft and the contract policy. This is on leadership at 343. This is not on the devs. This has been mismanaged from moment one, and Microsoft needs to reconsider their 18-month contract policy because it seemingly destroyed the efficiency of 343 and could likely do the same thing to other studios underneath their ownership. So let's take a look at it here. We're on Reset Era, and this is where somebody took the time to sort of interpret what was being said by Bathrobe Spartan here on Twitter in native French. And some of this is extremely discouraging for people who are looking forward to the future Halo content that they were working on. So the first bullet point here is 343 seems to have lost around 1/3 of its workforce, internal and contractors. That's pretty significant. We heard they lost about 60 people. I don't know. It's either more than that or they had already shrunk significantly since they did go through a hiring freeze, and all of the contracted workers will naturally just fall off when they hit 18 months. So more than likely they had already shrunk quite a bit, or at least shrunk somewhat, before the layoffs started. According to Jason Schreier's article that we looked at a long time ago, people that were working at the company said about 50% of the staff was on contract, which means by now those people are gone. So if you do a hiring freeze and then all the staff is trickling off on 18-month contracts and half of them are on contracts, it makes sense that when the layoffs hit, they lost about 1/3 of their workforce. There probably wasn't a ton of them left. 2023 plans seem unchanged by this major reshape. Focus was still and is on multiplayer for this year. Forge MM, new seasons, Battle Pass, new maps, and probably Tatanka. So the focus seems to be continuing to be on multiplayer. But then we get into this next section where stuff just got scrapped. Before Bonnie Ross quitting, Joseph Staten with a small team was preparing to ship multiple contained campaign DLC to expand its narrative over the months or even years. This plan was stopped when Pierre Hintz and the new key roles came in after Ross, as they've seen too much complexity in creating new contents for campaign. Plus, it was not enough profitable. It wasn't profitable enough for them to sustain, so they decided to completely halt them in favor on focusing on multiplayer only for the time being. This may have led to Staten deciding to leave. This is easy to believe. This doesn't sound made up. We know that apparently the campaign team was hit the hardest, and that would make sense. If they're like, listen, that content takes way too much time, it's not profitable, the only way this continues is through multiplayer and a Battle Pass format. We know this works. It worked with Master Chief Collection. It works for other multiplayer games. I just think this is a very reasonable thing for them not only to do, but it just seems very believable. Next one. Halo Infinite largely missed its financial and overall goals and led to Microsoft's decision to halt 343 active development, transforming or regress them into franchise coordinators. So they will no longer be in active development on the product, on the franchise, which many of us were hoping, listen, start over, maybe even hand the franchise to somebody else. That seems to be happening. This means that other than supporting Halo Infinite multiplayer, which is already largely externalized to certain Affinity, Spearsoft, and others, their role will be limited to make sure different external studios will create further Halo projects, direct sequels or Infinite story or spin-offs or different genre, respecting all the established lore and fundamentals for the IP. Many of us speculated that 343, now shrunken to such a small size, would be repurposed into a support studio or quality assurance studio. It kind of sounds like that is happening. With respect to the engine, Slipspace Engine is still in place along with its internal engineers, but it will be opened up to learn and use also to all external studios working with the IP if they want. This is not encouraging to me because using in-house engines alongside the 18-month contract with Microsoft policy, I think is just a recipe for disaster. If you use an industry standard engine, at least when you hire contracted workers, they can come in and already kind of know the engine that you're working on. I don't think Unreal Engine 5 is like the savior of the universe, but at the very least, it's going to become an industry standard engine. Many people and many studios are switching to it, so you'd have a larger talent pool to pull from whenever you're hiring those contracted workers. So I'm not super excited to see the continued use of the Slipspace engine. We know in the middle of development with Halo Infinite, it was rumored that they considered switching off of it to the Unreal 5 engine. In this sense, 343 together with Microsoft Game Publishing started contacting and contracting with external studios to create, quote, future Halo experiences together since 2020, also with the aim to reduce optimized cost budget. So apparently, as early as 2020, they were putting this plan in place to hand it off, which is likely why Halo Infinite launched in the state that it is. So this person says, so basically Halo as we know it has arrived to an end. If these claims are true, this means that we would wait a very long time to see a proper sequel to Master Chief's story on Zeta Halo, while simultaneously seeing Halo Infinite multiplayer still supported and the Halo franchise expanded with smaller projects, each of them as a different spin on the universe by different studios and artists. And then they just kind of conclude, and they're obviously not happy. Now, Ains, or Porsche PWR here on Twitter, who, let's see here, there we go, gaming tech application dev and positivity head of Seasoned Gaming and the host of SG Bitcast, said, I was waiting to share this as they do a good job of breaking it down. So he's commenting on the bathrobe tweet and says, from what I can corroborate, the below is accurate. Halo is certainly not going anywhere, but to realize its potential, the management structure is changing drastically. So he's able to corroborate enough to say, listen, this is accurate, this is happening. And again, I don't think anything we're hearing is outlandish or crazy. It all sounds pretty predictable. It's so in line with what so many people were thinking was going to happen anyway. It just kind of stands to reason. Now, there's a little bit more from Reddit, where they said that 343 going forward is going to be producing content for the multiplayer portion of the title to the detriment of single-player narrative content. We know this from what we just read. As such, these staff losses will not affect the studio's current plans for Halo Infinite for 2023 and beyond. All content, future seasons, modes, and elements planned for this year will be maintained and not interrupted. So everything they had planned for multiplayer is coming. So that, again, is being corroborated here. This includes all the Halo Infinite related projects the 343 Industries and outside studios are working on, like Forge. That's from Skybox Labs. Then the maps and the content are being handed by Sparasoft, and then Certain Affinity is handling the modes and the elements. So this isn't the end of Halo Infinite when it comes to multiplayer. Between the positions transferred to other teams within Microsoft and the non-renewal of outside contractors, 343 Industries is actually losing a third of its workforce. So they're elaborating a little bit on why that total is so high, 1/3. The non-renewal of outside contractors right here, as I speculated in the beginning of the video, is playing a role here. On the other hand, these departures which mainly affect the teams responsible for producing visual and narrative content for the title are the result of two different versions within 343 Industries. Interesting. The continuation of the narrative universe versus the financial needs of the studio. A small team with the support of Mr. Staten had worked on and proposed the possible plans for the continuation of the major 117 adventure. Several short DLCs for Infinite led to a major expansion of the game through a new campaign within it. Oh, we were going to get that. The new management team at 343 Industries had created another assessment of the campaign and the single-player narrative content offered by Halo Infinite following the departure of Bonnie Ross. So it sounds like they were really wanting to expand on the story and campaign, and they came in and said no. I mean, we got a smaller summary of that in the other on Reset Era. Unfortunately, against the latter and rather in favor of multiplayer. So, single-player narrative content has proven difficult to produce in recent years. It does not offer strong player retention. It doesn't allow for viable monetization for studio and team sustainability. I think long-term they could have pulled this off. This is really disappointing because Joseph Staten early on, I could tell his vision for the game was to blend the multiplayer Spartan that you invested in and bring that along with you into the story elements. And you can see when he forms his small team, you can see he was trying to bring that vision to reality. Short DLCs that were going to lead to a major expansion of the game. and it just was too expensive. And again, I get why it didn't retain players, because it didn't really come to fruition. The two sides of the game were just vastly disconnected at launch. I mean, for Pete's sakes, the multiplayer launched in a beta and the campaign launched separate. If you look at the Metacritic scores of Halo Infinite, it's only about the campaign. It was a very bizarre way to launch your game. So the decision is not to continue the production of narrative single-player content for Halo Infinite or for Halo in general at this time. Okay, so this is corroborating what we already heard. Given the financial expectations that Halo Infinite failed to meet, 343 Industries executives were forced to act. These layoffs are the result of several factors: Microsoft's overall preparation for possible recession, the studio's high operating costs for not meeting financial goals, multiplayer-focused strategy for the future of Halo Infinite. 343 Industries will not disappear, but the game development part of the studio will. Golly, that's got to be hard to hear if this is actually accurate and true. Thus, the projects and future of the studio lie in a two-point strategy: coordinate Halo Infinite follow-up, give the Halo license to other studios. By having multiple people responsible for project management and balancing Halo Infinite, 343 Industries can delegate content production to outside studios, as it did for Season 2. As a reminder, much of Season 2's content, whether it be multiplayer maps as well as elements in the store of the Battle Pass, were designed by Sparasoft as well as Certain Affinity. This type of production will continue for 2023. If this is happening, it's somber. 343 was mismanaged by their own leadership. They were short-circuited and set up to fail by Microsoft's 18-month contractual policy, and it is probably something that people will celebrate. People have been very disappointed with 343's handling of the property, but I think much of this lands on the leadership and lands on Microsoft. The people that were in charge and that policy with contracts, I believe, are fully to blame, mostly to blame, for everything that happened with Halo Infinite, and this is great cause for concern for all other developers and all other projects under Microsoft's watch. I hope Halo can pull it out, and I hope they can get it into the hands of the right devs and the right teams, and I hope this game can one day again be a great flagship title, because it's one of the more memorable, one of the more iconic characters in video game history, and it's a sad day to read this if this is indeed the future projection for the Halo franchise. If you like this kind of content where I kind of react and go through stuff like this or give my opinion on something, hit subscribe and the bell button so I can catch you in my other videos.